Hare Hare guest isn't here yet, I got a phone call from his host. Just give me a moment while I try to get
Oh dear. They say you put it flat. It's supposed to be put your foot flat.
When your legs are folded, put it to.
No,
at this point, put it
yeah.
flat now. Oh, okay. I can feel that. Okay, that's cool. Almost there.
No.
But I don't need a wheelchair.
Oh, you're here, good. You're here to give the cross. Oh. Painful. Oh, lovely.
Yeah. Are you feeling it?
Three. I'm nervous. What? Yeah. Maybe we could play from first class or something. No.
Such a long phone call for right there.
New York City traffic, you never know what you're gonna find on the subways, but
Sure. And on the weekends too, they're very rich circles.
they're doing track service now in Brooklyn, and you have to take the shuttle. I live in Crown Heights, and you have to get off and take the shuttle bus.
On the weekends.
On the weekends and in the evenings, I work evenings, so I get off at 11 p.m., so, you know, that's when they like to do all the track construction, so.
What train is that?
It's the 4 train and the 2 in the street. They all go to New York.
No.
Hare Krishna, everyone. Hare Krishna. Sorry, let me do something quick here. Hare Krishna, everyone. Welcome to Bhagavat Sravana. Nice to have you here on a Sunday. We do this program every Sunday, starting at 11 o'clock with some kirtan. And thank you to Ari Prabhu, who's disappeared, but thank you for a nice kirtan. Can we get a round of applause for him? So, that was for you, Ari. You didn't get this. Take it out. So, yes, so this week we have a special guest speaker. His name is Jai Nitai Das. Hare Krishna, it's nice to be here. So, okay, and some of you can leave. I know some of you came all the way from New Jersey just to see Padmanayana Prabhu, so the call I was just on was to say that somebody thought that someone was going to go and pick him up from the Brooklyn temple, but that was never communicated in the mix anywhere. And so I said, well, even Jai Maharaj just, not saying this is what he has to do, comes on the train. It's like the roadies usually come, takes 15 minutes. And so it wasn't clear, so like that, so by the time he gets here now, it would probably be like, you know, a little late and like that, so, so unless someone else would like to volunteer to give class, any volunteers? Ari, promoted, that nice kirtan, give class, okay. Would you like to give class? There's senior man here.
Yeah.
Senior says, I mean senior.
I don't know what to talk about.
You don't know what you're talking about? You do or you don't?
I don't.
Okay. All right, so so if everyone's okay, I'll just step in. I've got at least 50 classes prepared. And worst case scenario, we can just revert to myself and Yadu after having a banter and make you all laugh, and it'll be good. Okay, with your permission, okay, so Jai Nitai is, now I get to read my actual bio. I don't know if I can find it quick enough. Anyway, he's a pompous, arrogant person who's potentially condescending and offending devotees. So we'd like to welcome him here today to give a talk. So thank you. Big round of applause for this. Thank you. Louder, louder, please. I deserve louder. So, put this aside. Please bear with me for a moment. So is there anyone who's here for the first time? Yes?
Do we have a garland?
I was under.
Do we have a what?
Can we get a garland, please?
There's a garland for Patmanaya in the room. I don't know that I would want. I knew I was going to get it, I would have left it for Prabhupada and Bachelor's gifts. Okay. Don't they have any bigger garlands? Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Hare Krishna. I think this is a little better sound wise. Okay, so Ari, could you come and stick on the TV? It's just the bottom button there. And, yeah, short straw this week.
Check out.
No, it's okay. I'll get it. It's okay. It just takes a second. It's just right there. It's that first button. If you slide your hand at the back, it's not on the front. The bottom one.
The screen.
Yeah.
The
Right
screen.
there. Is it green?
Yeah.
Screen.
You did.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Well done.
It's in your blind spot.
So, I prepared for hours and I thought I'd give a little talk about the holy name. Would you like to hear something about the holy name?
Right.
Anyone here has ever chanted Hare Krishna? Okay. I'd like to chant Hare Krishna. Excuse me. Or we could do an overview of the Gita. Or we could discuss Krishna Swarup Shakti. Or we could discuss transforming lust into love. Or obstacles on the path of devotion. Where is that? Let's see. Oh, there it is. Okay, perfect. Okay. Okay. So now I'll try to get serious. Om Gyanatimirandasya Chakshurumilitam yena tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam yena bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Gurun Shri Yuta Parakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrijatam Sahagana Raghunatham Vitam Tam Sajivam Sagritam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakanvitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurange Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanusute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpataruyascha Kripa Sindhubhyeva cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasati Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Jai Shri Prabhupada ki Jai. Okay. So Hare Krishna, thank you so much for being here. So, talk today is entitled Harinam Chintamani, or the touchstone of the holy name. Just curious, who here knows what a touchstone is? Anyone has any idea? 1, 2, you think so? Okay, what do you think a touchstone is? Not you, because you already know. I want to embarrass the person who says they only think they know. We're brave enough to say they think they know.
Okay.
Yeah,
Well, I'm not sure if it's an actual object, but looks like an object to me.
okay.
I thought it was more symbolic, like a landing, like a point that you land on, or a reference point.
Okay.
So I don't know if it's a physical object.
Okay, beautiful. Thank you for that. That's very valuable. So actually a touchstone, okay, someone who thinks, yes, Ari?
I was thinking it was something that turns everything to gold when it comes in contact.
Yes, thank you very much. Yes, that is it. That is called the touchstone. There's another name for it also in different kind of quote unquote folklore. It has a different name. Anyway, yeah, I can't remember now. The touchstone is in alchemy. It's a stone. It's like a wish fulfilling jewel. And basically the idea is that whatever you touch that stone to becomes gold. It turns into gold. I think there's a story called the Midas touch. King Midas, he's granted a kind of boon or benediction. He gets a wish that anything he touches can turn to gold. So this idea of the touchstone is a similar type of thing. It is an actual stone or an object, and it's described that actually in the spiritual world, in Goloka, that the roads are paved with chintamani. Chintamani stones means that the whole place is chintamani. The whole place is a touchstone. Chintamani means a touchstone. So it means that in the spiritual world, and it's also kalpavriksha trees. Anyone's heard of a kalpavriksha tree? Kalpavriksha tree is a wish-fulfilling tree. And Prabhupada would explain that if you go beneath that tree and you wish for anything, then that tree can provide anything that you want. So you might go there and say, today I like mangoes, and it can provide you mangoes. Or you say, I like apples or peaches or whatever, jackfruit, whatever it is. By the way, jackfruit is an unusual, anyone has ever seen jackfruit growing on a tree? Isn't it weird? I mean, I was sitting in South India under a tree and someone said, oh, it's a jackfruit tree. And I looked up and there were these things the size of watermelons growing off a tree. And I thought, I think God maybe dozed off. It's like the platypus kind of thing. Like, you wouldn't put jackfruit, but they are. They can be like this big, huge things growing on a tree. So anyway, touchstone, the kalpavriksha tree can give anything. And the touchstone, the chintamani stone also can give basically anything you desire, but generally the understanding is that whatever it touches turns to gold, like that. And so this talk is going to focus around the idea of the touchstone. So this personality here, because this story involves one great personality in our lineage whose name is Sanatana Goswami. So Sanatana Goswami is one of the famous 6 Goswamis, and also he's a direct disciple of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He received initiation from him and lots of instruction. In fact, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu spent maximum amount of time, a month that you could say, with Sanatana Goswami, instructing him in the knowledge of bhakti. Sanatana Goswami is also the oldest of the 6 Goswamis, the elder brother of Rupa Goswami. And Sanatana Goswami and Rupa Goswami were both very prominent people in the government of Bengal. Specifically, at one point, Sanatana Goswami was the prime minister of Bengal before it was kind of divided into Bangladesh and West Bengal and like that. So he was the prime minister, and Rupa Goswami was the finance minister. And they were both from very, very well-established families, Brahmin families. But they took posts in the government of the Nawab Hussain Shah, who was obviously from the Muslim government there. And that meant that as soon as they took those positions, they were considered amongst the Brahminical community as outcasts, because they were serving directly in the ministry of the Nawab, of the governor of that region, of that area. And that made them basically untouchables. So, but they still continued they were daily reading from Bhagavatam, daily giving discourses and speaking. At the same time, they were doing all this public service. And the main reason they took up this service was because they thought if they take up these positions under the Nawab Hussain Shah, then actually they could protect their community, which is what they basically did. They served in such a way that they served as kind of this perfect medium between the community and also the kind of what could have been potentially real tyranny or tyrannistic type of personality. And they were able to keep him appeased by more or less making sure that he got plenty of money and felt like he was in control, and he was able to protect them from anything negative happening, and also keeping, in one sense you could say, spirituality and religious life alive there, especially for in that time, maybe the Hindu community or the predominant Gaudiya Vaishnava community. Even though by their own sort of community, they had become considered outcasts, so like that. So Sanatana Goswami is a very, very exalted person, wrote many books. If anyone here is familiar with the Brihad Bhagavatamrita, anyone knows? So this is continuation of the Bhagavatam. Anyone here's read the Bhagavatam, parts of it? Okay. Anyone managed to read it all the way through yet? It's a work in progress. So, after the Bhagavatam finishes, and you know the story, Parikshit Maharaj, who has 7 days to live, after his conversation with Shukadeva Goswami, he basically gets up and he's ready to go, and he happens to see his mother and a group of other ladies who are gathered there, that because of the assembly of all the sages, they were sat way at the back. And she says, Parikshit, we all came to hear, but we could hardly hear what was being said. And then she said, can you please tell me what Shukadeva Goswami said to you? And I'm always thinking, Parikshit must have been like, hey Ma, I got like 20 minutes now, before the snake bird's gonna show up and kill me. And we just had a 7-day conversation, by the way. I've been fasting, and I hardly slept. And like, really, Mom? I mean, is that? But actually, Parikshit was just such an exalted person. He was like, absolutely, Mom. I can tell you in synopsis what he spoke. And then he spoke the Brihad Bhagavatamrita, which is kind of condensed. And it's, anyway, it's an amazing book. I can't recommend it enough. And for those of you who are into these things, it's shorter than the Bhagavatam, so you probably, you're like, well, I can get through this one, It's only 3 volumes, it's like 3 cantos. So anyway, Sanatana Goswami wrote that book. So the story begins. So this is a story about a Brahmin, who you can see here. His name is Gopi. And like many Brahmanas, there's something often, Brahmanas are generally considered rich or poor. What do you think? Are they usually rich, poor, middle class? Rich? What do you think?
Middle class?
Middle class?
They're usually from the aristocracy.
Okay,
Normally.
okay.
Somewhere in the middle.
That would be middle class, yeah. What do you think?
Poor.
Yeah, actually, Brahmins are usually, they're considered poor, which is good. This is interesting because everyone here is kind of like, what, really? So when you said rich, I thought, yeah, of course they're rich, because they're rich in spiritual knowledge. They're like immensely wealthy because they're the teachers, they're the philosophers, they give guidance, they give knowledge. And in fact, everyone pretty much gives them money. Gives them lakshmi, gives them dakshini, gives them donations. But they immediately spend that or distribute it to others. And they only usually keep enough for what they need to keep themselves going. So in one sense, they often keep themselves in a little bit of a poverty-stricken condition. They're not usually super wealthy. Of course, these days you might find Brahmins who are very wealthy because they don't really do that so much anymore. That might be one of the Kali Yuga degradations kind of things. But in general, especially if you read through the Bhagavatam, usually the Brahmanas that you come across, they're usually relatively poor, poverty-stricken. The most wealthy or aristocratic would be the Kshatriyas, the kings, the princes, the military class, and or the Vaishyas, who are the mercantile class, or the people who are regularly making, their whole thing is how to make money. But they're also, because they're making so much money, they're often taxed. They're taxed by the Kshatriyas, and then they give the money to the Brahmins, and the Brahmins kind of distribute it back into the system. And then the last group would be the Shudras, and they're generally also not very well to do, because they're just the working class. Blue collar, is that the right term? Blue collar. So anyway, he's a Brahmin, and he's quite poor. He's quite a poor man. And even in Chaitanya Charitamrita, there's pastime of one Brahmin, Vasudev Dutt, who was really, really powerful, amazing devotee, so dear to Lord Chaitanya, but he could not manage his money to save his life. He was always giving his money away to other things for, spending it in the worship of different personalities, deities, So Lord Chaitanya asked Shivananda Sain to become his finance manager. He said, his family is suffering so bad, you need to look after him. So even Lord Chaitanya instructed one of his disciples to help someone else with their finances, with their money. Not to give him money, but to help him manage it. So Gopi, this Brahmin Gopi, he wasn't so well off, he wasn't so good at managing his Lakshmi, and unfortunately, similar to the Brahmin in the 10th canto who went to see Krishna, Sudama. Similar to Sudama Brahmin, his wife, whose finger you can see here in the picture, said to him, you need to sort your life out. You need to make sure we have something to eat and we can take care of ourselves. And you're not really doing that. We're kind of coming under too much. So why don't you go and visit your friend Sanatan Goswami? Because we've heard that he's in possession of a touchstone. He has a touchstone which can turn anything to gold. So since you know Sanatan Goswami, why don't you go and visit him and just ask him if you can borrow the touchstone for a little while. And you can bring it back and we can touch a few things and then we've got some gold. So Gopi, you can see in this picture here, he was kind of like, because a Brahmin doesn't usually want to go and beg from another Brahmin. He doesn't want to go and disturb someone else with his problems or issues. But he reluctantly, mainly because his wife's finger was so powerful, you can see that she's like, go. So he left. So before he left, he was actually, as described, Gopi was a follower of Lord Shiva. And so he went and he worshipped the Shiva Lingam and he was praying to Lord Shiva that please help me, to sort this out. I don't really want to go to give Sanatan Goswami a hard time, but please, I'm taking your blessings and I'm going for the right reason and not just, I want to go there with the mentality that I'm also trying to do some service for Sanatan, or I'm just going there with respect, not just to go and take, but I want to also give. So this was his move. So he went for a very long walk to neighboring villages to see Sanatan Goswami. And Sanatan Goswami lived, you can see, in a very he was also very high class Brahmin, but one of the Goswamis means that he just had a loincloth and his bead bag, and that was pretty much it, a little place to stay. So he was also a very poor person. And Gopi showed up, and Gopi immediately offered respects to Sanatan Goswami, began offering prayers in glorification of Sanatan Goswami, and then Sanatan Goswami was very pleased with him, and he asked him, why have you come? Gopi, why exactly have you come so far to see me? And Gopi explained that, well, actually I've understood that you're in possession of something, and I just wanted to know if I could borrow it for a little while because I've kind of fallen on hard times. And Sanatan Goswami said, oh, you want the Chintamani stone? And he said, well, if you wouldn't mind, I can borrow it for a little while, just to take it back. My wife, we're having some tough times. And Sanatan said, actually, no problem. It's just out back behind my bhajan kutir. There's a pile of rubbish there, and the stone is in that pile of rubbish, a pile of garbage. I use that word rubbish, the pile of garbage. And so you can just get it from there, no problem, take it. And so Gopi was like shocked, really? Are you serious? And he said, yeah, it's just out back, no problem. So then Gopi went out back and he was rummaging around some stuff, some old coconut skins, different things like that, some clay pots. And he found this Chintamani stone, and it was just like pulsating, glowing, and he thought, wow, okay. And of course, Sanatan gave him the mantras, because it's not like it just works, otherwise everything that was in the garbage pile would have been turned to gold. So you have to touch something and chant some mantra like that. So Sanatana Goswami gave him all the information, and he came back and he was like so grateful, thank you so much. And he was kind of thinking, well, why has he put the Chintamani stone in the garbage pile? It doesn't really make sense. But anyway, he's done it. So he went home, and immediately the missus started to instruct him to touch everything in the house and start turning all the kitchen utensils and everything else into gold. And so as he was doing that, they were both really happy and excited, and she was like, I can't believe he gave you the stone. And he said, yeah. He just said, no problem. You can take the Chintamani stone, take it home, keep it, do whatever you like. And she said, well, why would he do that? He said, I don't know. Even it was on the pile of garbage behind his bhajan kutir. He wasn't even keeping it in like a sacred or safe special place. And immediately she became very quiet. And she said, it was on a garbage pile behind his bhajan kutir? And he said, yeah, I thought it was strange too. And she said, She said, I think if he easily gave you this stone and it was just laying on a pile of garbage, he must have something more valuable. And so Gopi thought, oh, that's a good point. Probably that's the case. Okay. So she said, why don't you take the stone back to him and see if you can do a swap. Figure out whatever it is that he must be keeping that's more valuable than this Chintamani stone. Of course, what can be more valuable than a stone that turns everything into gold? I mean, who here would like to have a Chintamani stone? Just curious in the audience. Anyone? Yeah? Really? Like if I had one, if I had a touchstone, this isn't one, this is like a Kali-yuga touchstone. Turns everything to mud. So turns your brain to mush, So really, you wouldn't, only a few people raised their hand. The rest of you aren't interested, right? You're just too humble to raise your hands, right? Remember Prabhupada told the story that there was this yogi in India that whenever someone offered him money, his hand would automatically jerk away. And he was very proud of the fact that he could resist money. It was just like a natural, automatic thing. And Prabhupada, the devotees were telling Prabhupada, and Prabhupada was explaining. He said, take me there, let people give me money, I'll take the money, put it in my pocket, and put my hand back out again, say, give me more. He said, because it all belongs to Krishna anyway, so we take it and we spend it for Krishna. We engage it in his service, which is what the Brahmins are generally trying to do. So, she sent him back, take the touchstone back to by the way, her name is Lakshmi. So Lakshmi and Gopi. She's not Gopi, she's Lakshmi, he's Gopi. Okay? Like Gopi Paranadam. So he went back and he said, Sanatan, my wife kind of thought maybe I should bring the touchstone back to you. And because I'm just wondering, could we close that door at the back if you don't mind? So if you gave me the touchstone so easily, then you must have something more valuable. And you can imagine how awkward it was to be asking that question. But he did it because, sometimes you just gotta do what your partner says to do, and you do it, so like that. So, then, Sanatana Goswami said to Gopi, no problem. I will give you what I am in possession of that is more valuable than that touchstone. No problem. But I have one condition. And he said, yeah, well, what is it? Whatever you want. And he said, you have to take that touchstone back to the garbage pile and leave it there. And once you return it, you can never take it back again. So it's a final trade. So Gopi was kind of a little bit like, if he's putting the touchstone on the garbage pile, whatever he's going to give me must be so much more valuable. So Gopi said, okay, no problem, I'll do that. So then he did that. And he came back and Sanatana Goswami gave him a pat on the head and said, very good. That's it. It's all over. Yeah, I gave you blessings. That's better than the touchstone. Yes? Is that how the story ends? We don't know. That's not how it ends. But he was so pleased with Gopi because that was a massive sacrifice. Now, of course, it was a big surrender, but he also surrendered thinking, I'm going to get something bigger and better. So in one sense it wasn't completely selfless, but at least he listened to Sanatana and he was willing to give that up for whatever he had because he also didn't know. It's kind of like, what's that program, Let's Make a Deal or something like that. Do you want what's behind door number 1? Then you have to give up what's in the envelope that I just gave you. And you just don't know. So he was kind of like hoping it was going to be something great, but he trusted that Sanatana Goswami is such a saintly person that he won't cheat me. He's definitely not going to cheat me. And if he says he has something more valuable than this touchstone, then it must be more valuable. So then Sanatana Goswami gave him the Maha Mantra. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. And he said, this is Harinam Chintamani. This is the touchstone of the holy name. And he said, the other touchstone that I gave you, it just simply turns things into gold. But this Harinam Chintamani, it turns your life to gold. It turns everything that you are to gold. It perfects your life. And so, Gopi immediately began chanting. And as he started to chant, he became very, very blissful, very ecstatic. And Sanatana then started chanting together, and he started to feel great ecstasy. And he was like, wow, this is amazing. This is so powerful. And before he was feeling something when he had that Chintamani stone, but he realized what I was feeling and what I was tasting was very temporal. And it was very mundane. And it was based on he realized that he was feeling some greed in his heart. But now what he was feeling in his heart was something very, very pure. And of course, the reason gold is supposedly so valuable is because it's also very pure. But this was so pure. So he went into ecstasy. And he was just dancing and dancing and dancing. And then he began to make his way back home to see his wife. And he danced back to his house, and his wife was very excited to see him. And she said, hey Gopi, what did you get? And of course he was like, Hare Krishna, dancing in ecstasy. And so he said, Sanatana gave me Harinam Chintamani. And she said, what's that? And he said, it's the chanting of the holy names. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. And she started to chant. And then they were both chanting. And then they just both started chanting. And then they were chanting and dancing. And she said, this is amazing. And even though previously she had been worried about how they were going to take care of themselves because they didn't have enough Lakshmi, but she realized that the more she chanted the holy names, the more that her deep faith in the holy names made her feel like it's okay. Krishna will take care. We just need to trust that Krishna will take care. But ultimately, all of this is temporary anyway. But now what we're doing is sincerely preparing ourselves for the next life, yes, death. And actually, the more that we come in contact with this mantra, the more that we just feel great ecstasy and deep satisfaction. And she was also realizing and experiencing that before, everything that we would touch with the touchstone and turn into gold, I would just think, what else can we touch and turn into gold? Because she was also being affected by this greed. But now she was thinking, who else can we share this Harinam Chintamani with? Similar to the story of Ramanujacharya. You know the story of Ramanujacharya. He was with his spiritual master, one of his spiritual masters, and he had been serving him for some time. And he was told that if you serve the spiritual master sincerely, then he will give you a mantra that will give you liberation. And so he was serving and serving, but his guru, his spiritual master, was very reluctant to give him the mantra for some reason. He kept, Jai Maharani Radhika Devi Ki Jai, nice to see you. So he was very reluctant to give the mantra to him. He just felt like maybe there's something here, even though Ramanujacharya was so sincere and so serious and so sincere, but still he was reluctant. And so it went on for some time, and he was waiting, and then eventually his spiritual master said, I think you're ready, but I have to tell you that this mantra I'm about to give you is a secret mantra that you can't share with anyone. But when I give it to you, and you chant it, you will feel liberated. And so Ramanujacharya took the secret mantra and he began to chant. And as he chanted the mantra, he began to feel completely liberated, free from all of the modes of material nature. And then he began to go around in the community and he was chanting his mantra. But as he would look at other people, he would see their suffering condition. And he was feeling, all these people are suffering so much, and I'm feeling completely liberated from the modes of material nature. I'm feeling so connected with the divine, with Krishna, with God, that I'm just not feeling any suffering whatsoever. But when I look into the faces and the eyes of these people, I see they're suffering so much. And he realized that it was breaking his heart to see all of these people suffering so much. And so he made an announcement. All of you should come. I have an important gift to give you all. In a very similar mood to Sanatana Goswami. I have an important gift to give you all. This is the most valuable jewel I have to give, that I can give you. So you please come and hear from me. And he announced a specific place. And he said, tell all your friends, tell all your family, have everyone gather. And then he went to this kind of hill area. And they all gathered. And he immediately began to repeat this mantra. He said, just chant this mantra, and you will become liberated from all of your distress, all your difficulties. And he gave them the mantra. That mantra wasn't the Hare Krishna mantra. Anyone remembers which mantra that was? Anyone remembers? Do you remember? Would you like me to give it to you now?
Yes.
Don't start chanting this one instead of the Hare Krishna mantra. Om. You're supposed to say Om Namo Narayanaya. Om Namo Narayanaya. Om Namo Narayana. Basically, Om Namo, I offer respects to Lord Narayan. Because he's the leader of the Sri Vaishnavas, so they worship Narayan. But this was the secret mantra kept by the Brahmins, by the Brahmin class, and he just gave it to everyone. Also, just a side point, if anyone has ever heard of the band The Prodigy, anyone ever heard of the band The Prodigy? So they were kind of like a British kind of dance, funky kind of rock band. They met with Kula Shekar. Anyone's heard of the band Kula Shekar? So they're a devotee band. And they were all kind of coming up and becoming famous at the same time, and they were at the same studio at the same time. And Kula Shekar are devotees, like second generation devotees. And the singer, Crispin Mills, I think is his name, whose mother was also a famous singer. But they were chatting, and he was like, oh, so you guys are into like chanting and all this stuff? And he said, give us a mantra, we'll put it on our album. And they told him that story. And then they said they made a song with that mantra on it, and then that album actually became their like record-breaking album sales. And many of us think it's because it had Om Namo Narayana. But I don't necessarily encourage you to go and listen to it. It's very heavy. But anyway, side topic. So back to Ramanujacharya. So Ramanujacharya, he gave this mantra to everyone. Everyone started chanting, and everyone started like feeling liberated, and they were chanting so loud, Om Namo Narayanaya, Om Namo Narayanaya. You are supposed to start chanting, Om Namo Narayanaya, Om Namo Narayanaya, Om Namo Narayanaya, Om Namo Narayanaya. And guess what happened? Village was chanting so loud that his guru heard everyone chanting the secret mantra. Whoops. And he became furious. He became so angry. And he said, I knew there was a reason why I didn't want to give him that mantra. And he sent one of his servants, and he said, you go and you bring Ramanuja to me now. And so the servant went, he fetched Ramanuja. Ramanuja came back, and he was so angry, he began to chastise him. I told you, this was a secret mantra. You are not allowed to give it to anyone. And you broke your promise to me. I'm your spiritual master. You broke your promise to me. Everything that you're doing is only going to lead to one place. And by giving this mantra to everyone, he said, you're basically going to have to go to hell. You're going to have to experience your next birth in the hellish planets. And he was so angry. And Ramanuja looked at him and he said, my dear Gurudev, I'm so sorry that I broke my word to you. And I'm so sorry that I did something that you asked me not to do, but if I have to go to hell for all of these people to be liberated and free, then I'm prepared to go to hell. And he meant it. And his guru realized that he meant it. And he was serious. He was prepared to go right at that moment to the hellish world if he had to. And his guru immediately was struck, and he realized, you're such an advanced soul. And he began to cry. And then Ramanuja began to cry. And then actually he said, you are more advanced than I am. And he bowed down in front of Ramanuja and he said, actually, I want to take initiation from you because you're so advanced. So the reason I told this story is because in the same way that Gopi came back and he shared this mantra with his wife Lakshmi, then Ramanuja also shared the mantra. And in that way, the sharing of the mantra became very powerful, and many people became benefited, and this Harinam Chintamani was spread to every town and village. And now we're all in possession of the Harinam Chintamani. Right? All of us had the opportunity to chant. The challenge is that we don't always accept the holy name as Harinam Chintamani. Sometimes we just chant Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. Anyone ever chants like that? Don't raise your hands, okay? Or as Prahlad Maharaj says, shtick, 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 ram, 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 shtick, 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 ram, ram. I'm not sure what planet the shticker rams are going to go to, but, it's like, sometimes we don't really, it's like a child is given a valuable jewel and he just starts banging it on the floor. It's like, sometimes we just feel like we're not really giving the respect that's due to the holy name. So this famous verse from the Bhagavad Chaitanya Charitamrita. Nama Chintamani Krishnas Chaitanya Rasa Vigraha Purna Shuddha Nitya Mukto Vinatvam Nama Namino. It's actually a quote from the Bhagavat Sravana. Someone would like to read it? Anyone can you see that on the screen? It's a little small. Would you like to read? Yeah.
The holy name of Krishna is transcendently blissful. It bestows all spiritual benedictions, for it is Krishna himself, the reservoir of all pleasure. Krishna's name is complete, and it is the form of all transcendental mellows.
All right.
It is not a material name under any condition, and it is no less powerful than Krishna himself. Since Krishna's name is not contaminated by the material qualities, there is no question of it being involved with Maya.
Something else? Anyone?
Sure. Krishna's name is always liberated and spiritual. It is never conditioned by the laws of material nature. This is because the name of Krishna and Krishna himself are identical.
So this beautiful verse helps us to understand the gift that Gopi was given by Sanatana Goswami, that Ramanuja gave to all the people of the village, and that Srila Prabhupada came all the way from India to 26 Second Avenue and gave freely to everyone. And wasn't it such a touchstone for all those people who in the early days were gifted this mantra, and they were leading, many of them, extremely degraded lives. What to speak of Sanatan, who was considered an outcast because he was working for Nawab Hussain Shah, and all these people who were engaging in, so much sinful activity, basically. And Prabhupada just gave the Maha Mantra to them. And wasn't it, we all know the story that Srila Prabhupada was asked by someone, Swamiji, can you show us a miracle? Because all the yogis and sadhus are supposed to produce some ashes or produce some, have some bhakti city where they can bring something from somewhere and manifest it. And Srila Prabhupada said, this is my miracle. I have turned hippies into happies. One place Prabhupada was interviewed and they said, so they say that you're the guru of the hippies. He said, what is a hippie? He said, oh, that is something very extraordinary. Of course, we have this flowery vision of what the hippies were, right? It's just like, yeah. But actually, when you hear it described more by the people who were there, they were mostly like really just strung out, oftentimes a lot homeless and living really rough and, it isn't as, I don't think it's as flowery as we always paint it. It only got flowery after Srila Prabhupada showed up and gave the Chintamani of the holy name. So like this, so we're all blessed so much to have this touchstone of the holy name. So this talk is to encourage us to two things. First is to really have deep appreciation and respect for the holy name. So when we chant the holy name, to really take shelter of the holy name and understand that it is not different from Krishna. And the other is that we should also share it with others. We should also give the holy name to others and give them the opportunity to receive the same benefit and benedictions that we've received. So anyway, I'll end there. Hare Krishna. Thank you very much. Anyone has any reflections, questions, corrections, or chastisements?
curious about this story because Scripture is always recounting actual events. Right? And in the 16th century or thereabouts, alchemy was believed to be an actual process, but that doesn't seem to be the case. Right? So there was no actual stone that you could touch something, or but some process that could change metals into gold. You know? So how do we understand the story in that light?
So you're saying that it doesn't exist, it didn't exist, and it wasn't a fact, even though there were stories about it. It doesn't seem to be a
It
truth.
doesn't seem to be, at least. Yeah.
Okay. And doesn't seem to be why? Because you don't have one now, or no one is in possession of one, or no one seems to have the
Right. And the only,
capacity or the ability to
the
do
only
it.
stories we have from that it seems to be limited to our lineage.
Mhm. Actually, and I was trying to remember, I don't know if anyone can remember, there is another name in English for the Chintamani stone or touchstone. There is another name for it from another like kind of fable or ancient story. So, so basically your question is, did it really exist? Does it really exist? And if so, how come we don't have it now? Or was this all just some sort of a parable for the modern day, or for even that then to see, for people to understand something?
Right. Yeah, pretty much. Because and the story involves some Goswami who did exist.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's basically my question.
Mhm. Okay. So, first of all, I want to answer the first part of the question the way that I often hear Prabhupada answer, which is, with our tiny brains, we do not know what exists, what has existed, or what did exist, or what will exist, you know. And I think, you know, he one place he says, have you been to the bottom of the ocean? Have you been to other planets? Have you seen? No, because we think it's, and then he would tell the frog in the well story, right? So he would say, like, this Dr. Frog, you know, when his friend came back and said, I've seen the Pacific Ocean. He's like, how big is it? And he said, you can't describe. He's like, no, is it 5 times bigger than my well, 10 times bigger? And he's like, it's, you know, you can't fathom how big it is. So like that. So my first kind of reply would be that, yeah, we don't know if it did or didn't exist, or that science existed previously and people were able to do that. Just like they still kind of don't really know how they built the pyramids. Like it's often contemplated, like how exactly did they do this? Or I remember seeing a documentary years ago in South America, there's like the Mayan construction, that the stones are cut like laser precision. And they're like, we couldn't even do that now. How did they do that then? So it is quite possible that there were higher sciences that existed previously. We hear from the Ramayana that Ravan was flying on a Pushpa Vamana, you know, he was flying on a kind of air cart. And we hear all of these things. We may think that they're mythology, but actually they may be fact. It just may be that science is lost now because we are in a more degraded age. So like that. So I guess I would leave it at that, especially because the calls is not well.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna. Thank you very much. So now we're going to have Arti, so everyone can please stand and we can put the chairs and the cushions away. And I'm very grateful for your tolerance and listening to this story. Hare Krishna.
Jai Nitai Prabhu ki jai.
Welcome to our dear friend Maharani Radhika. Welcome. We're so happy to have you here.
Nitai.
Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Namo Vishnupadaya Namaste
Bhagavan Sravana, Charles Prabhupada Sarkis, Divine Grace AC, Bhaktivedanta Swami, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Discount founder, Charles Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. BBT founder, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Nama Charles Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Namzagaho, Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda. Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shyama Kund Radha Kund Giri Govardhana Ki Jai. Shri Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai. Mayapur Navadvip Dham Ki Jai. Ganga Maya Ki Jai. Jamuna Maya Ki Jai. Tulsi Devi Ki Jai. Bhakti Devi Ki Jai. Shri Shri Radha Muralidhar Ki Jai. Lord Chandra Bhagavana Ki Jai. Harinam Sankirtan Ki Jai. Sankirtan Yagya Ki Jai. Nitai Gaura Premanandi. All glorious to the assembled devotees. All glorious to the assembled devotees. All glorious to the assembled devotees. All glorious to the lotus feet of Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga. All glorious to Srila Prabhupada.
Namaste Narasimhaya.
Namaste Narasimhaya.
Prasad
Keshwar Prabhu Ki.
Hare Krishna, everyone. Hare Krishna. Thank you very much, everyone, for being here on Sunday and being part of the Bhagavat Sravana program. So this program happens every week, starting at 11 with bhajans, and then we have a class at 11:30, and then of course the arti and kirtan at 12:30, and then we move on to the final treat, which is a vegan prasadam feast. Haribol! Which we're going to start in just a moment. So just have a couple of announcements. We are quickly moving into a very special month, the sacred month of Kartik, or Damodar Mas. So a very, very auspicious month, and we have a number of wonderful festivals. Just when you thought the festival season was over, it starts all over again. So this is a beautiful thing. So starting, Kartik starts on actually the 7th of October is when Kartik starts, but on the Purnima, Monday 6th of October, we will have a very special festival. It is Sharad Purnima, and we're also celebrating the anniversary of the installation of Gaur Chandra here on the altar. So we'll have a beautiful festival on that day. All of this information is available on the website, bhakticenter.org. And then on Monday, the 20th of October, will be Diwali. So we'll have a beautiful celebration here. The plans are in the making. It should be a very grand event. So everyone is encouraged to please come. Bring your family, bring your friends. That will be in the evening of Monday, October 20th. And then 2 days later, on the 22nd, which is Wednesday, we will have Govardhan Puja. So this is the anniversary of the day where Krishna, here we have the picture, Krishna lifted Giriraj Govardhan over his head to protect all the residents of Vrindavan. So we'll be celebrating that on Wednesday, October 22nd. Again, it's an evening program. And then Saturday, the 25th of October, is our founder, Acharya Srila Prabhupada, his disappearance day, the day that he departed from this world, which will be, this year is 48, the 48th anniversary of his disappearance. So like that. That will be on Saturday, again in the evening, 25th. And then for the last day of Kartik, Wednesday, November 5th, we will have another festival here, and it's also Purnima, and we will have a festival here in the temple room called the Festival of 1,000 Lights. So we'll have many diyas lit here in the temple room for the last day of Kartik. So many festivals, and also Kartik is a wonderful month to participate in our campaign called Sponsor a Day. So you can sponsor a whole day of worship during Kartik for their lordships. It may be a special occasion. You can sponsor for your wife's birthday, just because your wife is beautiful. Just to say thank you, my dear wife, I love you. Just appealing to all the gentlemen here in the audience. That you can sponsor for your mom, for your sister, or you can sponsor for your husband too if you want to. You can sponsor for whatever you like. It can be any anniversary, any birthday, or you can just sponsor because it's Kartik. And you get the opportunity to sponsor the whole day's worship, and that will also include the diyas that are offered on that day. So very, very auspicious opportunity. If you're interested in any of this, you can speak to myself. You can speak to Sadhguru Gauranga Prabhu, who's also here. You can speak to whomever you like. But you can also, if you would like to sign up for, to make sure that you get updates from our WhatsApp group or newsletter, then you can speak to me and we can get you signed up for that also. I think that's it. Any other announcements? Anything that I missed? Anything? Okay, so I think that's it. So now we're going to serve prasadam. The feast is, as usual, it's free, but if you feel inspired, you can make a donation. There's some QR codes in a basket at the back. So thank you all very much. Hare Krishna. Shiva Prabhupada ki jai.
Yeah, and so we did the whole thing, it was great. And then we did the whole session, I didn't recognize it, the back. And once you got to the site, I was like, oh, this is like, this is familiar. Little by little, we got to spend more time and pick up on it. But I remember, it was really ecstatic.
You were planning to come.
One of the locations I have, after being there for some time, I remember that yatra has got bigger. Yeah, like, you know, for the maintenance. Yeah, when I was there, it was literally just a sea of sapphire. And we had just come back from doing books, we got dressed up, we're like, yeah, we're gonna do this, we're gonna get back out there. Kind of move, you know? Now it's more like,
Then you get used to it too.
the families with their kids, and, you know.
That's much the,
Right, because back then, they even did a skeleton group for a while in that transition. Guys, you know.
Okay, how are you? Thank you for being here. Serving on anyway. You up for a picture then? Are you doing every week? Well, you're here, right? So would you like, we could add you, we have a Bhagavat Sravana WhatsApp group. And every week we put down like a poll for people to choose whatever service they'd like to get. That's your turn. Who?
Perfect, there you go.
Yes.
How do you go? Wonderful to see you.
Yeah.
Thank you for your encouragement. Nice. Is this your daughter?
Yes, yes.
Good. What is her name?
Good, tell your name.
Your name is Bhakti? Wow, they named this whole building after you.
Or maybe we need
Nice to see you, Bhakti. Thank you for bringing Krishna and Radha some nice flowers.
Thank you.
Very
Thank you.
beautiful. So, the number of transfers on that. Yeah.
Create something that's a reminder or something, that could create
Facilitate this kind of situation.
Yeah, and also I've got that. So that when I just gave a girlfriend a graduation last week, and so I was thinking, somehow that kind of.
Yeah, in fact, I would pull from the drawings, right?
That was sometimes like this, actually, it's quite, it's already, where you,
Plus, we started before they were Hello, everybody. Hello, buddy. Need help with the chair? Okay, thank you so much. You want to close the door or anything? No, keep it open. Keep it open, thank you. You're welcome. Oh, you're serving, I can tell. Could be spaghetti for tea now?
No, she's not on this problem, let's go clean over.
Haribol. Come, come.